started to pay more attention to the water I drink in terms of quality and amount. I switched to filtered or bottled exclusively for drinking. The tap water in the community wasn't bad, but there was a particularly chlorinated scent smell that made me feel like I was in a swimming pool. I wanted to take the next step, but was uncertain as to what was the best choice in purification methods. Fast forward a few years, I've done a little more topical research, even saw someone else pull the trigger on a tabletop device that is reasonable for domestic scenarios. I knew it was time to take the dive. To me, there are really only 4 options available that are reasonable for residential water consumption: unfiltered tap, filtered tap, reverse osmosis, and distillation. Most of the places I've lived during my life have had decent municipal water, which is to say there is a central water treatment facility managed by local government. Though I was recently in a residence based near what I'd be a third urban demographic and experienced discolored water emitting from the tap. I also drank considerable amount of well water, as well as had stints in areas that bottled water was the norm, and adventures made filtering or boiling a requirement for durations of time. Personally, chilled and filtered was my long-time preference. I like knowing that the water has had additional particulate removed and is refreshingly cooled, though room temperature water isn't an issue either. I feel like reverse osmosis is a high-quality option for sure. It seems to be a fairly thorough method for filtration, and flavor reports are positive. However, the cost and installation process are inhibitive, in my opinion. It has to fit with existing utilities, not only in terms of design, but also available space. This may not be conducive to everyone's conditions. Also, they require replace filters, adding to the already higher cost of the system over time. That being said, if your usage demands are significant as the number of users, the retention may be the option for consideration. My individual needs are what I would consider average. I want to consume about a gallon of water per day through cooking, coffee, and glasses of straight H2O. So, to meet these demands, I recently purchased a water distillation machine. Running a gallon of tap through the process takes about 4 hours, meaning you can process it overnight and have a fresh batch the next morning. Of course, this will require additional cost in regards to electricity, but then again, so does filtering and chilling water via a refrigerator system, which also requires expensive filters way too often. Another side effect is that the machine emits heat while running, warming the environment you have it operating within. While this is perhaps a disadvantage in the summer, move it outside I suppose, in the winter, that heat is captured within the confines of your house, perhaps offsetting some of the energy usage to a small degree. Some people don't like water. It doesn't taste like anything, they'll say. These people should be thought of as amongst the clinically insane. In fact, some folks consider distilled water to have a weird taste, but what they are experiencing is 2 atoms of hydrogen in a molecular bond with a single oxygen atom and little else. The actual flavor of water, devoid of other minerals and contaminants. Now, I'm not saying you don't need to ingest some of these elements. I take supplements, but this intake is at my discretion. This is the part where I begin to contrast water samples and raise the issue of total dissolved solids, TDS. I have also acquired a few basic water testing strips to ensure that the presence of contaminants is non-existent, or else to determine which particles are present in the samples. When addressing TDS, you are considering the parts per million of elements within the water that are not part of the pure H2O equation. This can be anything from trace minerals to hazardous contaminants such as lead, additives used by municipal filtration facilities like chlorine, and even pharmaceutical remnants that are not fully removed during that process. So I bought a TDS meter on Amazon to take an overall reading of this metric. I realize this is perhaps not the highest quality device, but I think getting feedback on the general ranges is at least a basic comparative indication. Next, I bought a battery of water tests to perform on the tap and filtered water samples to get a more granulated look at the solid remnants in the water prior to distillation. Let's do the numbers. Here you can see, according to the TDS meter, that water straight from the tap has a reading of 143 parts per million, or ppm. While this is the highest measurement of total dissolved solids in the samples I used, it does fall within the love zone, meaning it is above average for the United States. However, it is definitively hard. Filtered water didn't improve conditions dramatically at 127 ppm and is basically the same hardness, though we see an improvement in the metrics for chlorine, nitrite, nitrate, copper, and iron, according to my eyes. I want to note here that the tap water has an expressly chlorinated scent smell that is not present in the filtered water. Both the lead and pesticide tests were visually negative, which were exposed to the tap water only. Now you may be asking, why didn't you run the full battery of tests on the distilled water samples? Well, I think that it's pretty clear that the distillation machine emits water with incredibly low dissolved solids. Given that it registered at 4 and 5 ppm on the TDS gauge, I'm not certain there would be much of anything to see on the strips that wouldn't just be my eyes registering false positives. Earlier, you saw the remnants left over on the bottom of the distillation machine, the white solids in the center of the basin, and the discolored liquid in the ridge circling around it. I poured out those liquid contents into a glass and set it against the freshly fallen pure white snow this morning, as you can see. While this isn't a lot, some of it had perhaps evaporated before I poured it out. These liquid and solid remnants are more than I prefer to drink with every gallon of water I consume. For most of my life, I've lived in regions with high particulate count in the air and am typically only able to breathe out of one side of my nose at any given time. Since I started drinking distilled water, both nostrils are clear simultaneously most of the time. There may be other confounding factors to why this has been the case, but I feel good about this correlation even if there isn't confirmable causation. All of this is meant to get you pondering. What's in your water?